I would like to joke like my mom and her generation put menopause on the map. There was an awareness like, oh, there's hot flashes happening, or there's like certain things happening, and we kind of know to think of menopause. But perimenopause, the whole transition leading up to, was blindsiding. Like they had no idea. No one ever told them. I never was educated that this was going to happen in my 40s. So that's been a big part of my mission, is to bring that education to the forefront. I think that a lot of people will resonate with the idea that we get puberty education as children, usually in middle school or something like that, where we're like being taught like, hey, your body's going to be changing. Here are some of the things that can happen. And here are some resources if you need help with it. It's very normalized in society for teenagers to be educated. But we
Yeah.
women go through a second big hormone shift in our life, and there was not education.
Welcome back, my listeners. I often thought, should I put a DR in front of my name to really enhance my credibility in the space of women's health and wellness? If I were to do that and pursue a doctorate, I think I would want to follow in the footsteps of Dr. Amy Day, a licensed naturopathic doctor based in California, and has been prescribing bioidentical hormone therapy long before the days of the Women's Health Initiative in 2002. Well, not her personally, but her profession. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm not going back to school right now. I kind of like the role I play in women's health as a women's coaching specialist and a menopause doula, which is all about putting women in touch of the professionals who can give you the resources, the help. I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to educate. And Dr. Amy Day is certainly one individual who's not only educating, but empowering with some real common sense knowledge. This was such an educational episode, and Dr. Amy Day shares her personal and professional journey into women's health. Her passion for holistic care was ignited by her own health crisis. I mean, she had been in the field of naturopathic medicine, but what really led her into women's health was her diagnosis of stage 4 endometriosis that led to an emergency surgery. And this life-altering event pushed her to deeply understand and advocate for women suffering in silence, especially when it comes to pain that has been long normalized. And we'll get into that. Dr. Day highlights the dangers of brushing off menstrual pains and urges women to challenge the suck it up culture. She explains what endometriosis is as an inflammatory estrogen-driven condition where the endometrial tissue grows outside the uterus, and why dismissing symptoms like this leads to delayed diagnosis and unnecessary suffering. Dr. Day will introduce her signature framework designed to put women back in control of their health. And her approach is all about education, informed choices, and self-advocacy. Women deserve to know what's happening in their bodies and what options they have beyond the one-size-fits-all medical route. Dr. Day beautifully reframes perimenopause as a time when the body starts talking in new ways. And rather than seeing this phase as a decline, she encourages us to see it as a time of redirection, new opportunity. We're no longer in the procreative phase of life. We're stepping into exploration, creativity, and, as I always say, wisdom. She will point out that only recently has the term perimenopause even entered mainstream public health conversations, and much more awareness is still needed around it. Many turn to testing, and while lab tests can help, we must understand that menopause isn't something that needs to be diagnosed like a disease. It's a natural transition that benefits from understanding and support. We will also talk about Dr. Day's 3 pillars for her client approach and discuss how community, there it is again, community is such a vital, undervalued, underappreciated role in women's overall health and well-being, from the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual whole person that we are. As Dr. Day emphasizes, we need to have an integrated, empowered model that blends science with self-knowledge. Before we begin, here's something you need to know about Dr. Amy Day. Dr. Day hails from Berkeley, California, and she's a women's health and hormone expert who has been at the forefront of the natural women's health movement since 2004, when she received the 4th naturopathic doctor license in the state of California. She is a sought-after speaker and is the founder and clinic director of the Women's Vitality Center, a concierge-style virtual practice based out of Oakland, California, using a unique approach called the Vital Method. Her team offers compassionate care that combines lifestyle, counseling, functional lab testing, nutritional supplements, and bioidentical hormones to help women feel great in and about their bodies throughout all stages of life. You can find her at womensvitalitycenter.com. It's in the show notes. Dr. Amy Day, welcome to the Menopause Disruptor podcast. Pleased to have you here.
So great to be here. Thank you so much, Mary.
All right, let's unpack BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and also the holistic approaches in maintaining health and wellness. So, Dr. Day, let's get into your story. You have been, I would say, a pioneer of natural health movement since 2004. What initially inspired you to pursue this path?
Yes, it has been a path for sure. And let's see, I was first interested in just holistic and natural medicine out of a personal interest. I just always questioned the normal way of doing things and wanted to know if there were other options. And I was not raised, particularly naturopathic or anything like that, but it was just of interest to me, like, oh, the way you eat can affect how you feel, or learning about different herbs. Like, that was new to me. I was in college and learned about echinacea as something that could help when you have a cold. And I just did never know those things before. So that idea of expanding what it means to take care of ourselves, and the idea of healing and what that really means. It's not just the conventional medicine, like you have X disease, you do Y treatment, but more of the concept of healing as a whole person. When I was in college undergrad, I was getting a business degree because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my mom actually sent me an article that was in like Women's Health magazine. Like, she had it like ripped out of the magazine in an envelope, actually mailed to me on paper. And it was the first time I had ever heard of naturopathic medicine. And it just opened up this idea. I was very logical, and I liked science and math and like knowing how things work. But I had just never found anything that really sparked my interest and curiosity the way that naturopathic medicine did once I learned about it.
So then your journey, take us into naturopath medicine to eventually open up your practice that, very interesting, it combines lifestyle counseling with lab testing and natural supplements, bioidentical hormones. How do you come to package this all together to better support women and women's health today?
One thing was the decision to focus into women's health, particularly. I was in naturopathic medical school, and I decided to get off the birth control pill, which had been, given to me when I was younger, because that's what everybody is given for any kind of women's health conditions, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I wanted to do the natural way. I wanted to get off the pill. And it turned out that cycle after cycle after cycle of getting worse and worse and worse pain, I realized and ended up being diagnosed with endometriosis. So I had that kind of masked earlier on in my life, but had an emergency surgery at one point. And because I had been ignoring my pain and just trying to push through and suffer through, like we are also very prone to do. And so like emergency surgery landed me with the diagnosis of endometriosis stage 4. And coming out of that really had me look more carefully about, like, okay, what do I really want to be focusing on? And so my personal journey of wanting to really learn how to help myself really turned into then wanting to help so many other women eventually in my practice as well, because the experience that I had as a patient was not what I would have wanted. And I really wanted to create a practice that was empowering and really supported women on the journey, give you options of different ways to go about things, and really build, diet and lifestyle and herbs and nutrients, and then additional treatments on top of that when that's appropriate too. So it was really my experience as a patient that really formed my idea of like, I want to do this better and I want to do something that'll really be a different experience for the women that we work with.
And we hear it time and again. Often it is our own personal experience that is the motivator, the fuel for which we pursue a purpose, a career path.
Right.
And your pursuit sparked by, unfortunately, a diagnosis of endometriosis. Tell our listeners, and we've heard this often, but sometimes it can be confused or misdiagnosed. So tell our listeners exactly what it is and how to rule out whether she has it or not. I would say this is a perfect time to break for a word from our sponsors. Guess what? You, my listeners, are my sponsors. That's right. I would love it if you could support the show. Helping me will help bring these amazing episodes to you each and every week, just packed full of information to help you on your menopause journey. And to support the show, all you have to do is go into the show notes and click just above where you read Meet Your Host. In green is Support the Show. You click on the button and it'll bring you to a page where you have the option to donate monthly, 3, 5, 8, 10. You can be a loyal supporter for as long as you want with recurring fee as little as $3 a month and opt out at any time. Each investment goes directly back into producing episodes with even better content, improved audio quality, and will go a long way in bringing great guests onto the show.
So endo for short, because endometriosis is such a mouthful to repeat. So endo is a women's health condition where the tissue that is very similar to the inner lining of the uterus, which is called the endometrium. There's tissue that's very similar to that, but instead of growing inside of the uterus, it's growing somewhere outside of the uterus. So it's in the pelvic cavity. It might be on the organs, on the bladder wall, on the intestines, on the outside of the ovaries. It might be on the inner abdominal walls. It can be in other places in the body too, but those are the most common areas. And these tissues respond to hormones the same way the inside lining of the uterus does, where it builds up every month and then bleeds every month. But instead of being able to shed through the opening through the vagina, like the uterine lining sheds, this is just bleeding internally in the abdominal pelvic cavity. So it can create a lot of pain, is really the hallmark symptom. And that can be pain with the periods. It can be pain other times. It can be pain with exercise, with sex, with bowel movements, with urination, depending on what's going on. It creates a lot of inflammation in the pelvis and can be connected to difficulties getting pregnant. About 1/3 of women with endo have struggles with fertility. And some women with unexplained infertility actually have endometriosis, even without pain. So it is possible to have endo, but not have pain. So that's maybe that in a nutshell, but maybe a whole other hour-long conversation.
I would say for certain, definitely. And it's worth exploring just a little bit. And I would say right now is that if any woman feels that she might have this, get it checked out.
Yeah, that's the thing. We really tend to normalize pain, right? And normalize suffering. And the fact that a period is painful, we can just feel like we need to tough it out. And while it can be, yes, normal to feel some symptoms, like your body is going through a shift when you're having a period and when you're bleeding and when your hormones are shifting at that time in the cycle every month. But if you're having so much pain that it's really impacting your life, and you're having a hard time functioning those days, and it's getting in the way of your work or your school or your relationships or anything like that, yes, ask for help and get evaluated. And if the doctor that you go to doesn't seem like they know much about it, go to a different doctor.
Absolutely. Yes. If we're getting ignored, dismissed, it is a woman's right to request the help that she deserves in our healthcare system, which unfortunately still seems to be in a very patriarchal structure, very volume driven, of course, and very little time.
For sure. So in contrast that you're asking how we package things. So my practice now is a concierge style. We have a virtual practice here in California. We're down in California in the US. And we have an annual membership where we work with patients over time, and we really know you and we know what's going on. And you have a doctor who's your main doctor, and then you have a health coach available to support you too. And we collaborate as a team to support patients. And it's a really different kind of experience where you're being supported in a different way. So that's been part of what I really wanted to put together so that women would have that kind of experience in their healthcare.
And so reading in your bio and of course on the website, this is the VITAL method. Tell us a little bit more about what some of the core principles behind this approach to healthcare are in your clinic as opposed to traditional women's health.
Yeah. So my clinic's called the Women's Vitality Center. So we're all about vitality and being vital. And so of course we had to come up with something that had the initials of VITAL. So the vital method is to start with V as validate. And really, number one, when you go seeking help, you should be believed, you should be listened to and heard and witnessed in what's going on with you. I still to this day, it saddens me, so many stories that we hear from people of their doctor blowing them off and telling them it's not real. And that can definitely happen with things like endo, all sorts of issues when we're in our 20s, 30s, but it's so common with perimenopause and menopause as well, which I know we're going to be getting into, but just being told, oh, that's normal, or we don't do that, or just being blown off like that and gaslit. So we start with validate right from the get-go. Number two, the second is I is for investigate. So the importance of getting more information, of course, taking a really detailed history. So we're understanding your history and your family history and everything like that. And also labs, which we can touch on a little later too, but getting that investigating, like what's going on here, because you need to know what's going on in order to know what to focus on and what to do about it, which takes us to T of the vital method. T is target and track. So the idea of having a targeted treatment plan that's based on the information that we know so far, and then tracking so that you're monitoring and seeing and noticing what happens from that and how do you do with that. And which brings us to the A is adjust. And I think this is unfortunately a piece that's often missing in conventional medicine. It's like, oh, you have this thing, here's this treatment, and that's kind of the end of the conversation, where that ongoing relationship to be able to adjust to make sure that it's working well for you, that if you're having any side effects that's being dealt with, if it's not working and we need to try something different, that's being monitored and adjusted over time. And then L is for live it up, because I think it's so important that we recognize that health is not only for the sake of health, it's because of how the health supports you in your life. And we love working with women who are difference makers. You're contributing to your family and your community, your career, or whatever it is that you're doing. Like you want to have your health and your energy and your vitality really supporting you to do the things that you're doing in your life, so that it doesn't become, I'm just like managing my health constantly. It's that you have your health supporting you to do your thing, to do your purpose.
Absolutely. I love that. So let's talk about the specifics when it comes to treating women in their menopausal years, addressing their symptoms, and then addressing it from both a bioidentical hormone perspective and holistic living.
Yeah. So one thing just to segue and explain, I shared my endometriosis story, but then there's perimenopause too.
Yeah.
So,
We all have a story.
yes. And I really actually started focusing my practice on perimenopause well before I was going through anything personally. Perimenopause and menopause is such a huge thing right now, but I've been at this for like 20 years. And I think that supporting this phase of life has been such a missing piece. And it was something that I really wanted to focus on empowering women with education and knowledge and options for moving through this phase. When I was 40, which was like 10, 11 years ago at this point, I super focused on perimenopausal support in our practice. So that has been our specialty for a long while now, since, whenever that was, 2015, 2014. So part of my thinking at that time, and it was that there had been some progress in raising awareness around menopause. And these last couple of years have done it so much more justice of just raising awareness and putting it on the map. And like knowing, I would like to joke, like my mom and her generation put menopause on the map. There was an awareness like, oh, there's hot flashes happening, or there's like certain things happening, and we kind of know to think of menopause. But perimenopause, the whole transition leading up to, was blindsiding people left and right. Like they had no idea. No one ever told them. I never was educated that this was going to happen in my 40s. So that's been a big part of my mission, is to bring that education to the forefront. I think that a lot of people will resonate with the idea that we get puberty education as children, usually in middle school or something like that, where we're like being taught like, hey, your body's going to be changing. Here are some of the things that can happen. And here are some resources if you need help with it. It's very normalized in society for teenagers to be educated. But we women go through a second big hormone shift in our life, and there was not education. So I have a Perimenopause 101 mini course in my online community. And like, we try to do a lot of workshops and education because it's really important that this conversation is happening and that we're talking more about perimenopause and menopause and having an awareness that like, oh, let me connect the dots, like these different things going on, like that might be my hormones, and to even think to get help or ask about that.
So women come to you, I assume, in clinic and work with the clinic virtually as well?
Yes, throughout all of California. So we're licensed by state. And currently the doctors on my team are licensed in California. We're considering expanding to other states, but that is the current is throughout all of California because we are a virtual practice. So you don't have to be coming to a certain location in office, but a person doesn't need to be in California to work with us one-on-one. And we also then have an online community and lots of educational resources on our website at womensvitalitycenter.com. There's a lot of resources there too.
So Dr. Day and I, we came into each other's presence or contact through what's called Menopause Brain Trust group of women who are working in different facets of the field in menopause and perimenopause through either education or products and helping drive that conversation to the forefront. And oftentimes, and me as a menopause doula, menopause coach, I'm not in the business of subscribing or even diagnosing or counseling. I put people in contact, such as you, Dr. Day. But I have found that the conversation still is geared towards, well, if I can just get my doctor to prescribe some hormone therapy, if I can just go see an OBGYN that's going to help me get bioidentical hormones. Let's unpack that. It tends to be a topic of great interest, certainly for my listeners. And I think it's really important to understand that the role it plays and what it doesn't play in women's health, so that we can have a real educated conversation and really solid information around this, even as the yardstick is moving fast and furious with the Menopause Society putting out its position statements. We were just seeing, like you'd mentioned, we were seeing leaps and bounds in the last even 5-6 years. Let's unpack the role of BHRT.
BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So people can argue about whether the word replacement should be in that. But yes, you mentioned 5-6 years. I'd say even in the last year, there has been a huge leap in interest and awareness, and podcasts like yourselves and lots of book coming out and movies, the M Factor came out, all those things. So the one thing I just want to share is that as naturopathic doctors, we've been using and have been trained on bioidentical hormone therapy all along. So even before the Women's Health Initiative study that came out in 2002 that concerned everybody about possible concerns with hormone therapy, even before that, we were prescribing bioidentical hormones. And certainly in the wake of that, when people were more fearful about hormone therapy, especially the kinds of hormones that were used in that study that had a little bit of concern about them, which got way blown out of proportion. And there are totally ways to work around that to make HRT safe for most people. But in the wake of that study, we have been turning to bioidenticals as the form of hormone therapy, as a safe way to get the support that hormones can offer, which is not everything. But let's talk a little bit about the hormones, and then let's talk about other things, because it's not only the hormones. Just for definition, just in case there's anybody new here to the term bioidentical, which refers to the concept that the molecular structure of the hormone, like the chemical actual structure of the hormone, is exactly identical to your own biology. So bioidentical, meaning the chemical structure is exactly what the ovary produces when the ovary is producing its own hormones. So that means that as that hormone is floating around in the bloodstream, your body is responding to it in exactly the same way that it would respond to hormones that your own ovaries had produced, which means it binds to receptor sites and it works the same way throughout the body. And it also can be detoxed and processed and broken down in the exact same way that your body has been processing hormones all along as well. So that's the definition for bioidentical.
And then, it's interesting because there's still a lot of questions that come up about, well, should I be taking oral estrogen? And of course, I want to unpack that a little bit more too, because still to this day, because of the lack of information and because we see on the internet, there's just so much sensationalism, there's social media posts and influencers that are just throwing out information all the time. And it can get very confusing for women. Confusing in terms of method of administration, confusing in terms of when can I start and should I be stopping within a certain time frame. And we're even seeing that the statement, as I mentioned earlier, from the Menopause Society is making clear about the safety and efficacy and risk versus benefits. I think this is a great intersection or a great time to really explain this.
Okay, so let's start with what are the forms of hormones that we're talking about, the hormone itself, and then we'll talk about the delivery method. So the hormones themselves, so there's estrogen, right? There's actually no one hormone that is estrogen. Estrogen is a family of hormones. There's no actual chemical structure that's called estrogen. It's a family. E2, the number 2, is the most common estrogen, and it's the one that is in the patch. If people are familiar with the estrogen patch for menopausal hormone therapy, it's called estradiol. It has the DI for estradiol is E2. There is another form of estrogen called estriol, is E3, that has TRI or tri in the name of it. Estriol is E3. There is also an E1, which is estrone. Has the word one in it, just for easy reference. So estrone, estradiol, estriol are the 3 kind of main estrogens. Those each get broken down in different ways and create other estrogenic metabolites that can have different effects in the body. So it's this whole family of estrogenic compounds that we refer to as estrogen. But generally speaking, when we just say estrogen, we mean estradiol. And within the realm of bioidenticals. So the other version of estrogen that some people may be familiar with that is not used very much anymore is Premarin, which is named for pregnant mare's urine. And that is the form of estrogen that was used in the WHI study that does have some concerns associated with it. But again, the concerns that were there were blown way out of proportion, but that, it's a totally different type of estrogen than what we're mostly using now today, or what naturopathic doctors had always been using anyway. So that's kind of the story on estrogens. There's also progesterone, and the word progesterone does refer to a specific one chemical molecule that is progesterone. There is also progestins. There are a bunch of different kinds, and they are synthetic versions of molecules that act kind of like progesterone, but they are not exactly the same as the progesterone that your own ovaries produce. As a category, these are all referred to as progestogens. That might be the bioidentical progesterone or might be one of the synthetic progestins. But just in case that terminology is helpful, just to mention and go over, a lot of times in research, they're just put together and they just say progesterone, even though they're actually referring to one of the synthetic forms. So you have to really look carefully at what you're reading and what you're seeing to know what form of the hormone they're talking about.
Right.
So those are kind of the 2 big categories, the estrogens and the progestogens. And then we have testosterone, which I will not want us to miss mentioning, which is part of the androgenic family of hormones, including DHEA and testosterone, which can also play very important roles in supporting female-bodied people in perimenopause and menopause when they need that additional support. I don't know if that was the whole first question, but I felt like we should start with those definitions.
I agree, because it can be confusing. And the more a woman knows, the more information she can advocate. She can go in with the information and have that good discussion with her doctor if she's not able to see someone like yourself who's well educated in this field, because we're still seeing a really a big gap in the medical field when it comes to menopause, and also when it comes to prescribing and diagnosing. So with this background, it gives a lot of women more armor, I would say, to go in and
Yeah.
state her case. Let's talk about the women who do come to your clinic and they are just beside themselves. They're experiencing a variety of symptoms, and everyone will show up uniquely, just like snowflakes. Talk us through how they will be first treated, obviously using the vital method, and where the role of lab testing comes in. Is it necessary for lab testing? And is it necessary to go on BHRT? And I was going to say, and then we can even take it one step further, the role of holistic lifestyle choices.
Yeah, and something else that you had mentioned, I just remembered in your previous question. So just to touch on it, is that these hormones can be delivered to the body in various formats, right? You can take things orally, you can apply it as a cream to your skin, like on your inner arms or inner thighs. There are ones that are available in a patch. There are ones that are delivered vaginally, either with like a ring or a cream or a suppository. Sometimes we do really concentrated creams that get applied to the vulva externally. So there are different options. And that's one of the things about trying to work with a hormone specialist, if you can find one near you, because really catering to you as an individual. Oh, there's also pellets. We don't do pellets in our practice here, but there are options and there are pros and cons to the different options, and really working with you as an individual. So I don't love it when a doctor only knows one way to do it and they just give that same version to everybody. It's different people respond to different things, and being able to have some flexibility and understanding about how to individualize the delivery method as well as the dose and how much of each of these hormones and what kind of combinations. So I don't mean to make it sound overly complicated, because I want people to feel like they can go to their doctor and get some help. But if you're going that path and you're not getting the help that you need, it doesn't mean hormones are bad or hormones are bad for you or anything like that. Like, it might mean that you need an adjustment of some kind that would help it to work better, either to work better for symptom management. And then also, you were touching on this a little bit, just safety profiles. Like, we know that generally speaking, estrogen, it's better to take in a topical form, topical or vaginal, and not oral. But there are some instances where someone needs to take it orally for some reason or another, and then that needs to be weighed with the pros and cons of the risks. And it's a nuanced conversation. We can have guidelines and an understanding of generally what's best, but then we need to work with the individual patient.
I'm glad you made that point, the individualized approach. And this is where the point I made earlier, we see so much, do this, don't do that, this is good, this is bad, but every woman's situation is unique. And so that adjusting and monitoring piece, so that she can get her quality of life, have her vitality, just the way she needs. And so hearing these blanket statements can be very daunting for women. I heard this, and oh, I heard that. And this is what confuses the space around menopause. We're seeing the yardstick or the pendulum swing, if you will. But in that process, there is so much gray area. And so
there really is. And we need to have structure of a guideline to start with and all of that. I'll touch, just because we're talking about the guidelines, the concept of timing of starting hormones or possibly ending hormones. That I will say there's quite an understanding of this guideline of, you, if you're going to be on hormone therapy, you want to start it before age 60 or within 10 years of your menopause, whichever one comes first. And that's because it's not as optimal to start hormones after you've been not without hormones for such a long time. So there are a lot of people who are over 60 who stopped taking their hormones because of the Women's Health Initiative study, or never started them because of all the fear that has been in place for the last 20 plus years. And I think it's a lot more nuanced than saying, oh, sorry, you're over 60, this isn't available to you. I think that we need to look at, like, well, what risks are higher starting at that point in general? And then how can we look at you as an individual and actually evaluate those risks more closely? There might be a higher risk of clotting. Well, there are ways to evaluate your clot risk and help you understand where your personal risk is, as opposed to what that kind of global guideline
Yes.
is.
Perfect. Very important.
Yeah.
And
And then you make empowered, informed choices.
yes, you speak my language, or I speak your language because you're the professional. This is really
we're talking the same language.
we're talking same language, and this is really key. When I went through my menopause doula training, it was all about meet them where they're at. You're a compassionate listener first and foremost. Then you help facilitate, curate the information. And if necessary, you go to bat, you advocate, you support them and help them advocate their case, because it really comes down to a shared decision-making model with their healthcare team, their healthcare professional. That is excellent, but the education comes first. So
Exactly. I love it.
the evaluation piece, the lab tests, I often hear this, like, I just want to get a lab test on this, whether it's bone density or hormone levels, FSH and LH levels, which you can speak to as well. My thought is it's great, but know this, you're going to have perimenopause and you will go through menopause. Some of those numbers will be misleading. It's work with your team, but don't hang everything on lab tests to just know my personal situation. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, and I agree, and I'm all for empowering with information, with the understanding of how you're actually interpreting that information. So yeah, but I will say I think there's an important aspect of what you're maybe touching on there, and see if we're talking the same language here, which is I think we're in a phase where we're at risk of over medicalizing menopause.
Yes.
And this is really a natural transition. It kind of feels like it's all new because we're all talking about it in the recent years. But I'll tell you, perimenopause and menopause have been happening for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
In all cultures, all around the world, in all different ways. And there's not much new about this. And this is a natural transition. And we don't need to overly, I use the term medicalize it, like that it needs to be diagnosed or that it has to be treated even. It's an interesting thing with what's happening with the menopause having its moment right now, is I'm super excited about the awareness and the conversations and the empowerment of that. And I'm a little concerned about how much emphasis there is on needing treatment. I want people to have access to treatment, but I don't want them to feel like they have to treat if they choose not to or don't need it or are doing just fine without it. And what do we mean by treat? Is it something we'll get into more too, but that's taking hormones or doing other kinds of things to support yourself? How I think about it is really that this period in our lives where we're going through our second hormone transition, kind of like puberty in reverse, this is a time for us to refocus a little on ourselves. So much of our lifespan is spent on others and taking care of kids and being a partner, taking care of aging parents and doing your career and advancing that and making sure everyone else is taken care of and everything's done and all of that. And I think this is a period of time where your body starts talking to you, and that it's a beautiful opportunity. People don't always think of this as an opportunity, but this time is really a window of opportunity to put some focus on self-care. And that can look like different things for different people, but that's a big part of it. You got to take care of yourself. Something for historical perspective, up until the last maybe 150 years or so, average life expectancy for females was around 50. That was kind of like this was the end in a sense for a lot of people. On average, of course, we had elders and people that would live longer too for averaging, but now with modern science, it is quite expected that we have decades ahead of us still post-menopause. And the opportunity to take action and really get committed to self-care so that your health is there supporting you for everything else that you want to do in your life. Like we said from the beginning of the call about the L phase of the vital method of live it up, you've got a lot of years and decades ahead of you. And this is a really opportunity to set the trajectory of how your health goes. for those years.
So well spoken. And yes, 100%. I am speaking your language. I actually did an article, a blog post on over medicalization of menopause.
Okay.
And I'm heavily on, and I say this often, Ayurvedic philosophy deems that menopause is the time of the great reveal. That all those things that we have not been paying attention to, listening to, we shelve away, we pretend, we avoid, we mask, they come to bear because estrogen is no longer playing the protective veil anymore. And it's a great time to tend to the garden that has been wrought with weeds for so long. And let it flourish. I love all of these.
And estrogen really helps us or encourages us, whatever, to kind of tolerate things because that's in the interest of the future of the species. Like for the sake of procreation, we have to kind of put up with stuff in order to be with the other gender and procreate. So I think that as we move away from that more estrogenic phase of our lives, that we have a real opportunity to be like, hey, what do I care about? And what am I going to put up with? And how am I this questioning that I think is also, again, very similar to our puberty in reverse analogy is questioning like, who do I want to be when I grow up? Who am I? This identity kind of questioning. And it's a really exciting time. It's not just hot flashes and dry vaginas. It's like can be an empowering, exciting time to step into your second half.
I love how you put it, estrogenic phase of our life. I love that quote.
Yeah. So you asked about lab testing. So in this is, again, this idea, this is not something that needs to be diagnosed. It's not like I have a growth and I need to get a image to look and see what it is or take a biopsy and check its stage. It's not a disease that needs to be diagnosed in that sense. We do have a definition of menopause. It's when it's been 1 year since your last period. The reason that's the definition is because you don't know when it's your last period, because if they're getting spaced out, like you can't tell if you're going to have another one. So you don't know it's your last one until it's been long enough that you're like, oh, I guess that was the last one. So about a year is the definition for that. The strictness of a definition of 1 year is really for research purposes. It's so that they can define like who's menopausal and who's not yet, and that kind of thing for breaking up cohorts and subjects.
Yes.
Studies, it's really the cutoffs and the exact boxes of definitions are not that useful to an individual person on the journey. One question that I get a lot is, how do I know if I'm in perimenopause? So someone who's, entering perimenopause, how do you define that? Because it's easier to define the end of perimenopause is when it's been a year since your last period. If you're having periods, that can be great for people with IUDs and hysterectomies and all of that. But generally speaking, we have that definition of the end of perimenopause, that 1 day of menopause, which I always recommend to throw a party for that 1 day when it's been a year since you did. I did too. Yep. And then after that is postmenopause. But how do we define the start of perimenopause? So I will reflect back something, again, the theme of puberty in reverse. Most female body people remember when you first got your period. Like that's like the start of a puberty kind of time. But think about your puberty years through your teenage years, you're 16, you're 17, you're 18. When does puberty end? At a certain point, your periods are more regular. You're finally more into kind of like a stable, not for everyone, but generally speaking, that like stable, regular cycles and things are not as topsy-turvy, but it's a loose thing. There isn't an exact definition. It's like things are a little topsy-turvy and then they get settled. Well, in perimenopause, after things have been more settled, things start changing. So it's really anytime that things feel like they're changing and they're different than what your normal had been. And that can be with the periods, or it can be with all the other symptoms. If you're getting brain fog, you're getting night sweats, you're not sleeping as well, you're having itchy or dryness or nerve things or hair changes or skin, like all these different kinds of changes, which you've probably covered in other episodes. I don't mean to say that everything that happens when you're in your 40s is perimenopause. There could be other things going on too, but perimenopause could definitely be a layer of whatever you're experiencing, just because it's a natural, shifty, changey time in our lives.
Yes. And we always look back in retrospect saying, oh, that's why 12 years ago I was really edgy, or increased fatigue, or recovery from my workouts weren't the same. And my approach has always been, let's go back and look at some of the pillars, whether it's perimenopause or not. Let's go back and look at lifestyle. Are you eating optimally? Are you resting enough? Are you managing stress? And are you moving the body, or are you living in a sedate lifestyle, being in a career, maybe sitting at the desk all the time? Because those factors also come into play, and they will amplify the symptoms if those aren't addressed. So I like to take the approach is you're going to go through perimenopause, and that the age is specifically when it happens. It could be first indicated by the thyroid gland changes with the sleep habits and the fatigue, because a lot will say it's the fatigue that happens first. First protocol might be giving progesterone. But regardless, again, great golden opportunity for the body to say, hey, we would like some improvement in our nutrition, please. The gut microbiome might be saying, hey, this good bacteria is just not digging those chips for lunch and Coca-Cola. And so it's such a beautiful invitation to really listen in and take control and go, yeah, you know what? This muffin top, which has been starting around age 35, maybe it's about time I start to address it. And doing so and living out a healthy lifestyle, we are optimizing those perimenopausal years so that we can enter into it with feeling a little bit more in control.
Yeah, I love that. And so that idea of a lab test to diagnose, is it perimenopause? It's not so much about that. It's more about just acknowledging this phase, having that commitment that you're talking about. I love that. And then the role of labs is often like looking at, well, what is it specifically that's going on? And is the thyroid off? Let's measure that. Or is there a gut microbiome thing that's off? Let's measure that. Is there an iron deficiency because you're having heavy periods now and you're exhausted, but if you supplemented your iron, your energy would be better? What is it that's actually going on that's part of your perimenopausal journey? So it's not really to diagnose perimenopause or not perimenopause. It's more to diagnose and better understand your individual journey and what's going on in your body so that you can focus your efforts, right? There can be too many things on that list of what you could do for self-care. So sometimes labs or having a better evaluation and understanding of what's going on for you helps you focus on the things that are going to make the biggest difference for you. I would love to share, I have 3 pillars of a vital perimenopause protocol.
Perfect.
And I think it would be great to dive into that a little bit with what we're just saying. And the first one is something that we haven't touched on too much yet, but I always want to make sure to mention is stress resilience and adrenal health. And we know that the adrenal glands that are what help us to respond to stress can really get into a phase of burnout at this time in life when you've been go for such a long time with all the demands on you. And as we move through perimenopause and menopause, we actually want to start being able to rely on the adrenal glands to produce some of our estrogen or progesterone that the ovaries are starting to produce less of. But if the adrenals are burned out, it's harder for them to step in to do that. So there's oftentimes an adrenal component to whatever is going on during perimenopause. And adrenal assessment is one of the biggest missing pieces in conventional medicine, in my opinion. They're never tested. It's just not looked at as part of what's making us feel unwell. And that's because the true disease states of the adrenal glands are very extreme on the very high cortisol or very, very low cortisol output. Whereas all the functional differences that can happen in between that are not from a disease state, that are more from the day-to-day functioning of the gland, are not really considered worthy of treatment in conventional medicine. There's no drug for that. But it's pillar number 1 in our protocol for addressing perimenopause, knowing what's going on with your adrenals, having your daily routines and habits supporting adrenal health and possibly using herbs and supplements that help to bolster adrenal resiliency to help boost energy and help with motivation and help with winding down and sleep at nighttime, depending on what exactly is going on with the adrenals. So that's pillar number one, is stress resilience, because we're all going to experience stress, but we need to be resilient.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then pillar number two is metabolic health. So this is where we want to take a closer look at things like the thyroid you mentioned before, the digestive health you were touching in on, cardiovascular health. How is your body's engine running and how is that going? And looking at the symptoms that are associated with those things and possibly doing labs if that would help to better understand what's going on for you as an individual and your body and the things that you're dealing with right now, because those all really factor in and have an important role to play in your experience of perimenopause. And it's setting the tone for your future. If you are having some cardiovascular signs that are off, like how can we be addressing things now to be preventive and proactive for your future? Yes. And blood sugar is in there too. I didn't say that one out loud, but huge importance of knowing your blood sugar and your insulin function. We prescribe CGMs for patients, the continuous glucose monitor. Sometimes the one that you wear on your arm, and it like reads your glucose for 2 weeks. So you can really get that immediate feedback of how your food and exercise and sleep and stress levels and how everything is affecting blood sugar and how you have the power to do something about it, even in the moment, to help get it down. The way you combine your foods, or if you go for a walk after you eat, or those kinds of things. So blood sugar is something that can really, a lot of women get diagnosed with prediabetes during this phase of life. And it's very empowering to know that, oh, okay, this is going on and it's something you can fix. It's something you can do something about to turn that back.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So then the third pillar is hormone balance. And that's usually where people like to start or are thinking of starting, but I really put it third on purpose because these other factors need to be part of the picture. Sometimes it's a three-legged stool, really. You know, it's like you might need to do all of it or whatever. It's not necessarily in the order of operations, but it's that hormone balance of looking at your estrogen, your progesterone, the androgens like testosterone or DHEA, and the balance between them and how your body is processing everything and really getting that extra layer optimized. But as you can see from that, it's not that the answer is, oh, I just need to go to my OB-GYN and get an estrogen patch and a progesterone pill, and then I'm treating my perimenopause and I'm good. Maybe those things would be a helpful layer. I also sometimes teach a pyramid. All these other foundational layers are so important, and getting your daily routines and self-care and your fitness. I know you're a big proponent of heavy lifting and getting that protein in and getting your sleep in, and really how you're approaching this whole phase of life and how you're taking care of yourself during it. Not only does that help you smooth the ride through the transition, it really sets you up for a much healthier future for yourself as well. So I like to tell people your 80-year-old self will thank you for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. And let's face it, it's those things such as frailty or incontinence and osteoporosis, osteopenia that are such a burden on the healthcare system. And if we had the information and then the right tools at the right time to implement and make significant changes for ourselves, doing great things. But I think holistically as a community, we can do better if we take those.
Totally. Yeah. If our healthcare system supported all of that, how great would that be? So we're working on it, one doctor's office at a time.
This has been fantastic information. And Dr. Amy Day, I wish that we could have one of you in every state, every province, every country. Your model is fantastic. It's of vital importance. I bet you hear that a lot.
Thank you. It's of vital importance. And I will say, if someone will travel to California once, we establish care. So
yes,
that's that. Yeah.
But that aside, education, we stress that enough. Education is such a significant factor. They can reap all the benefits of you with your education pieces.
Exactly.
So tell the listeners where they can find it, what's available to them. I did check out your little webinar masterclass today, and it was excellent.
Oh, great. Excellent. Yeah. So our website, you just go to womensvitalitycenter.com. has the information there. We have a free workshop that is called Navigating Perimenopause and Menopause. Is HRT right for me? And that will pop up on the website, or in the future, if the website has changed and someone's listening to this, you just go to womensvitalitycenter.com/workshop, and it'll take you to our latest workshop. And we also have an online community that you can join for free. And there's tons of resources there. So other recorded workshops and blog articles and places to post questions and share with the community and everything too. So check out the blog, check out the online community, and check out the workshop.
I love that you brought up community, joining a community, because that really is one of those hidden gems or one of those pillars of good health that doesn't get enough attention, but it is vital. Sorry, it really is.
I don't mind you saying that. I love it.
It's
yes,
so true.
yes.
And the episode that I launched this week was from another doctor who knew that we needed to do better in wellness, women's wellness. And she purposely left practice to create these communities so we can feel in company of others, share information, feel supported, share our stories. Because since the dawn of time, women have been gathering in circles, so to speak, of some form or another to celebrate, to honor, to raise each other up. And so that is
Yes.
lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love all of that. And yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone. And your body's not broken. It just might need to be taken care of a little bit differently, but it's you're not alone in this. And we have so much to learn from each other. As much as I have focused on this for such a long time, I still learn so much from our patients every day and learn from each other. Like every experience is something to learn and share, and be really open to other ways of doing things and other possibilities. One thing's going to work for someone and not for someone else, but if they share what they're doing, it might give someone else the idea that's something that would be really life-changing for them. So exactly, women gathering and supporting one another, that's what's going to get us through this.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful way to finish this off. It's such a great episode. Can't wait to share. And our conversation together has been delightful.
Thank you so much. This has been great. And I really appreciate your whole podcast, everything you're doing to make this information and all your guests available to your listeners and everything you're doing as a menopause doula. It's so cool. So thank you for your work in the world.
And thank you for yours. I'll get all those links in the show notes. Dr. Amy Day, such a pleasure to have you on the show. This is such a great conversation because we highlighted the fact that bioidentical hormones, while still very helpful in a woman's symptom management plan, there is such a broader approach to managing symptoms. And Dr. Amy Day really hit the mark when she shared with us that menopause isn't a medical problem to fix. It is a natural transition. I loved how she says that, puberty in reverse, emphasizing that this is a time for us to refocus on self-care and listen to what our bodies need, what our bodies are telling us, rather than feeling pressured to seek out treatments that we think are right for us, could be right for us, but there's so much more in our bodies to tap into, like movement and strength training, which I emphasize a lot in my podcasts, our nutrition, and of course, our management practices and stress reduction. If there's anything, sleep would be the panacea. If we can get that under control, we're doing so much for our health and well-being, and the statistics are showing that. But one of the biggest themes was the importance of education and awareness. And Dr. Day pointed out that many of us never receive any real guidance about what to expect during this phase of life. It's exactly why I became a menopause doula and an educator. And of course, Dr. Day makes it her mission to fill that gap, offering resources, workshops, and a supportive online community to help women feel more informed and empowered. Empowered means we have full autonomy to make the right choices, informed choices about our health and our well-being. And just like Dr. Day says, let's take a look at the big picture. It's not just about balancing hormones. It's supporting the whole person that we are, supporting our adrenal health, nourishing our bodies properly, staying active, of course, and managing our stress. And if you're interested in learning more or connecting with Dr. Day's resources, you can visit womensvitalitycenter.com for free workshops and access to our online community. Truly hope this conversation leaves you feeling encouraged and better equipped to navigate this stage of life with confidence and compassion. If today's insights resonated with you, I'd love for you to be a part of our growing community of menopause disruptors. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. And if you know someone who can benefit from these conversations, please share this episode. Sometimes a simple act of sharing can be the first step in someone's healing journey. And hey, if you're ready to take the next step in your menopause journey, I'm here to support you. You can find all my services, including my comprehensive menopause intelligence digital course, one-on-one coaching programs, and workplace education services at mlcoaching.com. It's in the show notes. Want to stay connected and get regular doses of menopause wisdom? Follow me on Instagram at Menopause Disruptor Podcast, where I share tips, insights, and real conversations about navigating this transformative phase of life. Let's continue to disrupt this menopause conversation together. Remember, midlife should be the best life, and it will be. Namaste.